Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys from Canada. You know we love you in Canada. We love the Big C tribe, but also there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. We have Big C calling in a little bit later. I think he's making himself welcome either. I think he's over at the wedding. He's trying to attend the wedding in England. I don't know if he's sneaking into the wedding or if he's been invited. There's been a lot of rumor, Big C. I know you'll call me once you land on the other side of the pond, Big C, but hopefully you got an invite and you just didn't show up. You know how kind of tradition in the African American community, you don't have to invite people to come to your wedding. They just show up, Big C. So I hope you're not breaking with some of the tradition and bringing that tradition from the South over to the good old boys and girls in England. I know a lot of people are really excited about what's going on in the land of the free. In the home of the brave, we have NBA basketball, and NBA basketball is fantastic. So much going on. We have the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors. We don't know who's going to win this series, but Las Vegas definitely has a lot of interest in where the money flows. Money flows where sometimes the underdog is. That's just a hint that what my good old friends taught me. But I know also with Cleveland. Cleveland is favored by 6.5 over the Boston Celtics. Who wouldn't want to see Cleveland and Boston play a 7-game series? So a lot of things are happening in that world. We also have just some comments that, you know, Lou wants the Cavaliers to speed up. They got to speed up the pace, but I think they got to slow down the pace. They haven't scored 100 points in any of their losses over in Boston. They're trying to rumble these young cats, and it's hard to do that. I think if you're an older team like Cleveland is over Boston, you might want to slow it down a little bit and try to attack the paint, and if LeBron can drive to the basket, maybe kick it out. Also, there's a lot of people who are loving the sound of hooves. And when you think of hooves, Big C, not the kind of hooves you talk about, Big C, down south, with that horse meat that you guys were scaring all the people up. In fact, I heard that you were going maybe to the Preakness. I thought you were going over to the wedding in England. But now that I heard there's a lot of horses running around up in Baltimore, Maryland, you might be heading out that way. Anyway, I hope that you're safe and that you have a nice trip wherever you go. I do want to say, for all of the people that love sports and entertainment, you know, we also, as far as I'm concerned, I love hearing about the Billboard Music Awards, and you know, there's a lot of things going on with entertainers all over the world, and I'm excited about that too. Janet Jackson is going to be doing her thing. There's a brother by the name of Josh Groban. He's an amazing singer. When You Say You Love Me, that's a song that he sings. You got to listen to that. Also, Janet Jackson is going to be at the Billboard Music Awards. En Vogue's going to be making their name known again, Ariana Grande. So for the people who love the entertainment circle, you know, Kelly Clarkson, she's going to be doing the host, and she's going to be hosting the awards solo. And for people that love sports, there's a lot of sports to watch this reason and this weekend. But seeing someone like Kelly Clarkson and seeing her meteoric rise, and she's going to be on the same stage with someone like En Vogue and someone like Janet Jackson. I know Janet Jackson has really kind of been MIA a lot since the Super Bowl fiasco where she was blamed for someone, you know, pulling her top open, and the woman got blamed. Isn't that something for the Me Too movement? And the man, you know who he is, went on to a lot more fame than what he was when he started that, because I do want to say that this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So with all the people that are thinking about what they're going to do this weekend, a lot of baseball that's going to be played around the sports universe, a lot of basketball. No one's concerned about anything really more than the NBA Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals. And I don't really know which way to go on this. I know some bookies have told me Golden State in 6 games against Houston, and also some people thought that the Cleveland Cavaliers series and the Boston series would go 7 games. And some people are even predicting that Cleveland would win that game in that series in the land of vibranium. So no matter who you go with, definitely something to watch. I think when you look at what happened with Cleveland, and we'll touch on it more when Big C chimes in, I think when you look at this series, there's something to be said about playoff experience. Brad Stevens, does he have a superstar player? And the point is, he has a superstar team. I think what you're seeing with Boston is you're seeing a team where they have players that play together. And again, they're doing this with Horford, really is the kingpin of that team. I love the way he's playing. There's no reason that they should even be where they are. There's no Kyrie Irving. There's no Gordon. I mean, these people were hurt. And you still have the Boston Celtics with a 2-game lead over the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. And just think of how we got here. Boston only has to win 2 of a possible 5 games left. Cleveland, they have to win 4 of 5. Now, that would be a meteoric rise, even though they have yet to have a home game. They're just underway in Cleveland. But if we look at how these teams got here, okay, I got to start with the Eastern Conference first round. Toronto was the number 1 seed, and they had the chance to take on a number 8 seed in Washington, and they actually bounced Washington, 4 games to 2. That series was a lot closer than a lot of people thought. A number 1 seed taking a number 2 seed all the way to the wire. And then you look at Cleveland coming into the playoffs as a number 4 seed, playing number 5 seed Indiana. And that series went 7. So if you look at a team in the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were up against the wire in every one of their games. And when you think about LeBron James having a meteoric game in all of those games, it was really a one-man show. I know he has Kevin Love, but they still have to find some help from their other teammates. It just can't be those 2 guys. But they got rid of Indiana 4 games to 3 in a series where Oladipo really shined, and he competed a lot with LeBron James, but it was more like the older Lion showing the younger Lion how things work. You look at Philadelphia, they were number 3 seed versus the number 6 seed in Miami. Philadelphia won that series 4 games to 1. We look at guys like Joel Embiid, and you look at Simmons, and those are 2 stars among many stars that you have with Philadelphia. Going against a little older Dwayne Wade and then Whiteside down in Miami, I love the way Miami competed, even though they just didn't have everything going down the stretch. They lost 4 games to 1 against Philadelphia, a number 3 seed that a lot of people were saying that this team would be the team that would get to the Eastern Conference Championships. And Joel Embiid even stated himself that they didn't need anybody else to help them. They had everything figured out. But you look at how Philadelphia advanced. Now we come up to number 2 Boston, the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, versus number 7 Milwaukee. Now look at Boston. No Hayward and no Irving. But I like the way Horford stepped up on that team. Of course, there's cast of surrounding players in Tatum, but I really love the fact that they can count on him. And they think about it for tonight's series. They took a number 7 seed Milwaukee, and they won a 4-3 series. That went 7 games. And you look at Boston, how did they go 7 games against a number 7 seed? For the people who don't give Cleveland a chance, there's something that to be said that Boston, sometimes they don't play at the level that they're capable of playing. And I look at, Giannis played a great series for Milwaukee, but he needs some help around him. So hopefully you'll see him mature over the years, and he'll be a more of a staple in the NBA playoffs. But a 4 games to 3 win in that series by Boston. And before we get to the Western Conference, where a lot of people are really excited about what's happening, Boston went into the Philadelphia series. You looked at a number 2 seed versus number 3 seed. And Boston took care of Philadelphia as a 3 seed a lot easier than they got by Milwaukee, a number 7 seed, 4 games to 1. And when you think about that, now they're up 2 games to nothing over Cleveland. They've won out of the last 7 games. They won 6 of those 7 games. That's how dominant Boston has been. A 4 games to 1 series over Philadelphia and 2 games to none over Cleveland. So that's going to be a tough out for Cleveland to even get back on track. I believe they'll get on track tonight. I think the NBA does a lot better when you don't have one the team not even getting a win or two in the series, especially when you get to the Eastern and Western Conference Championship. I look at Cleveland. How did they get here? Cleveland hasn't won a game since sweeping Toronto. Okay? And you think about it, 4-0. They swept them. Toronto came into that the number 1 seed, just dispatching of Washington 4-2. Cleveland comes in at number 4 seed, just dispatching of Indiana. And that's a series that it went right down to the wire. So Cleveland's been tested if their backs are up against the wall. But now they haven't won a game since they played in the series against Toronto. When you swing it across to the conference that a lot of people think the championship will come out of anyway, and that's the Western Conference Championship. You look at, a lot of people right now are high on Houston based on the big win down in Texas over Golden State. That looked like they really weren't playing the way they're capable. But Houston, a number 1 seed in the Western Conference and the best record in all the NBA, and they took on Minnesota. Minnesota is known as a team that would walk the ball a lot. They have the big cat there. We call him the big lion, and Karl Anthony Towns. But there was a times where he just disappeared or they didn't find him the way they should have. And Houston went through that series, even though they were tested at times, 4-1. Now they've moved on. A lot of people expect them to do what they did. A team that they really didn't want to face, a lot of people thought, was Oklahoma City, which had Westbrook and obviously Carmelo Anthony's a little bit older now, and George. They brought those guys together to try to get at least to the Western Conference Championship. Didn't happen. They were a number 4 seed. They took on a number 5 seed Utah. Utah wins that series 4-2. Utah, I just so much that I love about Utah with the young cast of players. And Mitchell's amazing. I think he's going to be a long-time success in the world of the NBA. So Houston moved on. And then Utah, obviously, with a 4-2 sweep of Oklahoma City, they moved on to the next round. They ran up against a team in Houston that has all of the championship pedigree that you need, especially going into the series with Golden State. Utah number 5 seed, Houston number 1 seed, and it was Houston dispatching of Utah the same way they dispatched of Minnesota. And you think about that. Houston's they've lost 1 game in every series so far. 1 to Minnesota, 1 to Utah, a 4-1 decision over Utah. And now they're up against Golden State, the defending world champions. They've lost 1 game, but they've come back and they really turned things around in that second game. We'll see what happens Sunday when they get into Golden State, because that's a team that when they play at home, it's really looking like Golden State has a home court advantage now. But I want to just bring that up as we talk about it later. I want to get into Portland. How did we get to where we are now? Portland, the Trailblazers. Damian Lillard, obviously a very dominant player. And in the series against New Orleans, a number 3 seed Portland, number 6 seed New Orleans, and New Orleans swept them. How do you get swept? I know Anthony Davis is a stud. I know they have Rondo as an experienced player, but when you think about it, how do you get swept when you have McCollum and Lillard in the backcourt? Well, because they're not big enough. Davis showed that he's the biggest lion on the court, at least in that series, and a 4-0 sweep. A lot of people thought that this was a team that could make some noise in the Western Conference playoffs. So they advanced, New Orleans did. Everybody was excited. Now you bring on the number 2 seed, the first time in 4 seasons that the Golden State Warriors, the guys from the land of vibranium, the defending NBA champions, and they've been in the finals the last 3 years in a row, a number 2 seed, only giving up the number 1 space to Houston right around the All-Star break. And they took on San Antonio, and of course our thoughts and prayers are with the Pop family, where he's lost his spouse. But this team battled with Manu Ginobili, and they still didn't have a Kawhi Leonard. Who knows where he's going to end up. But San Antonio, the way they played this series, you just got to say you tip your hat to the way they're coached. What did it say about Golden State to take on a team that some people thought they really had to struggle to get into the playoffs? But Golden State, having some players that were injured in Curry and also Durant throughout the regular season, gave them a chance to rest up. Golden State, a number 2 seed. San Antonio, a number 7 seed. Golden State with a 4-1 win in that series. They move on to the next series that a lot of people were saying, well, this is a series that they may be tested. We're hearing the same talk with Houston. Now, we're going to get into that later, but Golden State took care of New Orleans 4-1. In fact, it was in blowout fashion for the most part. They had a big loss down in New Orleans, a lot similar to the loss they just had in Houston. And when New Orleans went home and they were down 2-0, they had a big win on their home court, just like Houston did. A lot of people thought we'd have a series. But Golden State, I think it woke them up. They came back and played the way they have to play in order to win. So we get into how we got here. Houston against Utah, 4-1. Golden State against New Orleans, 4-1. So both teams have not lost more than one game in all of their series. This means that coming into this game on Sunday night in Oakland at Oracle Arena, one team for the first time this playoff season will lose their second game. That's a telltale sign because they're not used to losing. And who will it be? If you're the Golden State Warriors, you're home. You have everything going in your favor except for the point spread. Golden State is favored to win this series. They're favored to win this game, especially if you look at Las Vegas. Las Vegas doesn't want to pay out a lot of money. And the way they don't pay out a lot of money is when they don't have to, when they're right on the bet. So if Las Vegas has Golden State, the big favorite at home, and you're going to put money on Golden State, how does Vegas win? They don't. With Las Vegas having the favorite being Golden State, that might be fool's gold for people that say put money on Houston because, that would be the safe bet. No one's expecting Houston to win Game 1 or the first game at the Coliseum. That would be Game 3 of the series. No one's really expecting Houston to win the second game at the Coliseum. That means the series is over. What's in the best interest of the NBA? I think we'll see it tonight. It's in the best interest of the NBA, which is a multi-billion dollar industry, for Cleveland to get a win tonight. Now, who knows if they will? But if they don't, that shows you that obviously some of the people who bet and they want us to have these long series, and they say the more this series goes on, the more people are going to bet, the more money Vegas makes. We know what the Supreme Court just did with making it fair to bet every place, it seems. So the question is, when you are Houston and you're on the road, James Harden, as good as he is, he can't be the front runner in every single game. You got to have teammates that can contribute. And if James Harden's going to be the guy that has to score 40 points for them to compete, it's not good for Houston. They have to get their other cast involved. And not as much Chris Paul, but Capella. Capella's an inside game. I know the media's built it up as Harden and Paul. But Paul really, he fades when it comes to, crunch time. And you can just look at his track record throughout the league. I like him as an athlete, but when you put him up against guys like Durant and Curry and Thompson and Iguodala, he doesn't have it compared to when he played in Los Angeles. He always faded or had an injury. Remember, in Houston, for you good old boys down in Vegas, my friend was telling me about this, and you're still not getting my money. But it was Paul that limped off the floor down in Houston. I know a lot of people may not think that makes sense. I think it's funny because we tell you, when people talk about betting, they bet on certain players. It's important to see how Paul comes out and plays in Golden State because he limped off the court in Houston. My good old friend down in Las Vegas says that might be an excuse, or is he really injured? Is he trying to goat Golden State into thinking that he's not a guy that we have to put a lot of our attention on? So no matter what you think, I think when you look at Golden State, you got to get some production out of Steph Curry. How can the best player in the NBA, unanimous MVP, just a couple years ago, and the best three-point shooter in the universe, how can it be 1 of 13 from three-point range? Some people say he lost his legs. How? He had a lot of time off. You don't lose your legs when you're not using them. He's been exercising. He just had some ankle injuries. But he's back. But he hasn't played well enough, at least shooting the ball the way he can. And I think that's going to be a big sign tonight when you watch that game. Will he be able to play the kind of basketball that made him a unanimous MVP? We know Durant's going to get his points. There's some silly talk, and this is what I love about media sometimes. There's some talk that Draymond Green's mom was saying the reason the Warriors lost because of Durant taking too many shots and not passing the ball. I think that's silly. I think that's foolish. I think that's what happens when you have a lot of games off. I doubt if that's the case at all. Sometimes people joke and they make it seem like it's serious when you hear that. But when you think about this, Just something to pay attention to if you're betting. And again, my friends from Las Vegas call me, but he's not getting my money. Paul walks off the court with ice around his ankle. Okay? That game was very chippy down in Houston. And they went to the free throw line a lot. And sometimes I think you saw a play where Paul pushed Curry and Curry falls to the ground. Some people said, well, he was trying to draw the foul. Well, he may have been pushed to the ground because that's what we saw. But it wasn't called. If that play happens in Oakland, then Steph Curry gets that call. That's something that you got to keep in mind. It's not about saying who's going to get a call on the road. It's about who gets those calls at home. And I think back to all the players that have played NBA basketball. There's something called home cooking. And for two teams that have been dominant in the playoffs, Golden State and also Houston this year, it's going to come down to who gets calls. The home teams are going to get calls. We've seen that down in Houston. It's also going to come down to turnovers. Golden State cannot afford to come out and start turning the ball over 7 times in the first period. That to me is it can't happen. But also, if you're Houston, what you cannot happen is players like Harden or even Paul at times holding the ball 19 seconds of a 24-second shot clock and then trying to find the open player. I think if we're going to see anything that's going to tell us what's happening in this series, you got to look at that. Also, D'Antoni, and also you look at Kerr. Who do they have on the bench? How they use their bench players sparingly or a lot, I think it goes a long way. And Golden State has a deeper bench. Houston has been a high-scoring team this year. Defensively, not as much. They try to outscore teams. I think Golden State plays better defensively, and when they're at home with the Oracle crowd behind them, then that gives them the home court advantage. But all that matters is who makes the most points in the game, and that's going to depend on who plays better defense. So hopefully we'll see a good action in the Western Conference with Houston and also Golden State. I want to bring up a lot of things that people have been talking about as well. Should Golden State be worried about Steph Curry? I don't think you should be worried about someone who's considered an MVP of any league, and he's done it twice. He's led the league in three-point shooting two of the last 4 years, and he's been the kingpin to get the Warriors to the NBA Finals the last 3 years in a row. And even though they had Durant last year, he's still that guy. He's still the guy that if you have a team that's down by 1 point and you have 10 seconds left, who do you trust with the ball? Do you still trust Steph Curry with the ball to hit the winning shot? Well, I do. He has an inside game. He has an outside game. He has an assist game. He can shoot the 3. He can shoot the 2. He can get the basket and the foul. He has so much to stand up and guard against when you're looking at Steph Curry. And I think a lot of that will maybe fall not as much on his shoulders, but Draymond Green and Iguodala. Okay, and when they bring in West, and if they get some play out of JaVale McGee. But I think, again, it's all going to come down to who gets the calls, and the home teams tend to get the calls in those type of games. So more things will be showing its ugly head or good head. I'm sure the fans in Houston will say that things went the wrong way when it goes Golden State way, and they'll say it went the right way when it goes their way. And same thing in Golden State. Everybody's looking for an incredible season. And I want to close up kind of a story that happened yesterday. And you think about any player that's ever accused of abuse, whether it's spousal abuse, whether it's abuse of another player, and we know out here in the Bay Area, there's so many people that were glued to the stories of how do people turn a blind eye when an athlete beats up a woman. If it's a football player or a basketball player or a baseball player, a lot of people say, well, how can we turn a blind eye to that when an athlete beats up a woman? How do we say, well, it's her fault, the woman lied, or is his fault, he really did do something wrong? How do we actually, as men and women in our society, come to grips with that? Because we always say on the Big C Sports Show, if something happens to you, you got to call 911. Don't leave it up to the team. The team is going to cover for their players. And even something as cynical as what happened in the 49ers situation, there are people that are saying sometimes you're paid more money to change your story. I would hate that to be the case, that anyone can come out and accuse a person of domestic violence, and because the money is big enough that you're willing to retract your story and change your story. But that's some of the cynical talk that I'm hearing out here in Northern California. So I hope, no matter what happened, I hope that going forward, if you're a woman and you find yourself in any kind of trouble, you can't just let this be something that you're going to say, I'm going to take money to shut up and let it happen, and maybe he didn't mean it, and maybe it won't happen again because he really didn't mean to do it. He was just under a lot of stress. And we know we've seen a lot of guys do stupid things. We've seen that happen. We saw the Josh Gordon incident with the New York Giants where they hit him. The Mora family hit it. They hit it, and they said, well, he beat his wife 20 times, the police were called, and he still played in a Pro Bowl. He still played for the New York Giants. So when you look at the 49ers, there are people who are saying they should have fired him right away. And I don't even want to mention his name because if he's innocent, why throw his name out there again? But this goes for any player. We know that has happened with Ray Rice when he was playing for the Baltimore Ravens. And he and his spouse. No one should ever hit anybody. And I know that's one thing to say it, but men, we can stop this. I know we want to know who won the game. I know we can't wait to see who's going to win the Eastern Conference and Western Conference playoffs. I know that. But when you have situations where women are trusting the men that they're with not to beat them up, and the 49ers organization, I know they took a lot of criticism at first, especially John Lynch, that they didn't fire the guy right away or cut him from the team. But again, when you hear stories, no one was there. I wasn't there. So me having an opinion doesn't mean anything. But those two people were there. And I don't want to say that the gentleman was innocent or guilty because I wasn't there. That's up to the law to decide and the investigators. But I have known personally where people have accused athletes of something, or even individual citizens, private citizens, something that they did not do. And then sometimes the money shows up and people say, well, we're going to say that you didn't do it because they are, it's funny. They say money answers all things. And that's even a biblical thing. But if you think about it, why would they redact the story? And I don't understand why we want to say we redacted the story because a woman was lying. I don't know if she was lying. And I just hope that no matter what happens, that we have to figure out what really happened. Because there's people that are being beaten up now as we speak. I've never been in a situation where someone beat me up. I've never been in a situation, I've had fights on football fields, but that's pretty much man on man and the best guy wins. But I've never been in a situation where I felt like I was going to be beaten up. Even fighting with some guys in MMA, just doing some sparring, I never felt like I was going to be beaten up. I never felt like my life was threatened. I never felt like I was in jeopardy. I've never felt like I had to worry about that. And so I just don't know what to say, but I do know I've known some women that I've known personally that were in abusive relationships. And would you believe, telling those women not to put up with it and to leave, some of those women would stay in the situation anyway. So, and oftentimes the person that says, well, I'm going to see if I can help you, when you call to see if you can help them, you're the ones that they say, well, stay out of my business. You don't really know what's going on. That's something that a lot of times men and women, when you have someone in that situation, you don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going on. So for any athlete, especially the ones who play pro sports, we talk about them maybe being targets. And you can be a target. You can be a target. And if you are a target, that's where I want to ask all the women that think they need to find out if they can be of help to someone they know who is going through that situation. And I'm telling you, we don't know if those women are in that situation. We just don't know if they're in that situation. We hope so, and we'll get Big C calling in a little bit. But I just want to say, as we've talked about the charges being, the judge is still deciding what's going to happen in that situation. And I've had other women ask me about that today, and I've heard other talk shows saying that the 49ers make the right decision. We don't know. All we know is that if you've ever been accused of anything, the whole world assumes that you're guilty. They don't even wait to see the evidence. They assume that if you're an athlete, that maybe you're guilty. And I don't want that to be the case, that anybody is let off the hook if they did something or did not do something. And so I do want to say, and then we'll get Big C on the line, that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or even your mom and pop soccer leagues, when you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you at 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. So, Big C, we've talked about, we have the Preakness running, and I don't know if you're across the pond. I know they said there were a lot of beads that were swirling around on the streets over in the United Kingdom. I don't know if it was you, Big C. Some beads were running around. They also know the Preakness is running up there in Baltimore, so they had beads around the horse track too. Some of the horses were afraid to run, especially they heard how you like to eat certain types of meat, Big C. So, Big C, how's it going for you good boys down south of your neck of the woods? Big C, I think we got you coming on in just 1 second here. We were talking about you and those horse races and all the stuff going on. And are you in London or are you over there at the Preakness? I know you're someplace, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about the Preakness, that's what they call the original surf and turf. You know, you got horses that are out there running on the turf.
Yeah.
You think about being in Chesapeake Bay with all the seafood that's out there, Charlton, all those wonderful lump crab cakes that they have there in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's going to be some horses maybe fall by the wayside. you never know what happens.
Yeah.
You know, but in a sporting weekend, Charlton, it leaves a lot of people hungry. And, you know, a lot of big parties go on.
Yep.
So, you know, at times, if a horse is not a winner, then he's a loser, so he's worthless.
Yeah.
It all depends on which plate he's going on.
Yeah, that's funny. We talked about that earlier, Big C. I know, you know, we talked about the races before and the Kentucky Derby and how you actually picked Justify. We were talking about Justify My Love, and we had a couple of other good horses we were talking about. But before I even get your thoughts on the wedding, because I don't know where you are, if you're at the Preakness or if you're across the pond, but I know there have been a shortage of beads down south, but a lot of beads have washed up on shore across the pond and also up there in the mud up there in the good old boys in Baltimore. Big C, where can Big C Sports be heard from? Are you still down south or do you travel, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we're always on the move. Sometimes we don't realize where we are until the sun comes up the next day.
Okay.
So, you know, when you get on a plane, a lot of times you just close your eyes.
Yeah, just close your eyes.
You know, they accepted your boarding pass, and then you go from there.
That's true, Big C. But I know we got a lot going on in the sports universe, and I was running down how we got there in the NBA, but I want to close off with your thoughts of the NBA, and then also we have the NHL happening this weekend. I talked about the American Billboard Award. That's going to be exciting. I think on Sunday, competing against NBA basketball for NBC. Probably not a good choice to compete with the NBA Finals, but we do love music. But Big C, I want to get your thoughts on the Preakness. The 143rd running of the Preakness is a 6:48 p.m. start on the East Coast. And, you know, I just want to get your thoughts. We have a couple of horses. Justify is the one that everybody's picking. And sometimes it doesn't mean that, hold on. You got to justify my love. Can you justify me? That's the great Jeffrey Osborne. And I love some Jeffrey Osborne back in the day. Remember him with LTD, Back Together Again? And you and I are back together again, LTD, and how great Jeffrey Osborne was. Man, talk about him a little bit, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you know, Love Ballad to me is still the signature song with Jeffrey Osborne.
Yeah.
You know, what we have is much more than they can see.
Yeah.
You know, there's a beautiful balladeer voice that he had, Charlton. I mean, just an outstanding performer. And back in the days when songs resonated, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, of love and feelings that, you know, you could play that song in front of your mother, where you can't do that nowadays with music.
God,
you got to sit out in your car, you know, and listen to stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, Jeffrey Osborne, you're just a marvelous entertainer over the decades, Charlton. He has resonated and stood the test of time. You know, but when we get there to the Preakness, Charlton, and there in Baltimore,
yeah,
you know, it's the second leg in the Triple Crown. And you think about Justify. A couple of weeks ago at Churchill Downs, the first horse, Charlton, to win the Kentucky Derby that did not run as a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't a long book on this horse. You know, he'd only run 4 or 5 times, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so people really didn't get a gauge on it, but he got right to the pole right out of the gates.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was over. You got to understand, animals don't like things thrown in their face,
no.
especially when they're in the chase.
Yeah.
And so when on a muddy track, Charlton, when you got mud being thrown back off the cleats of a horse, Charlton, those other horses don't pick up steam. They have a tendency to hold back a bit.
Yeah.
But Justified came out and did what Bob Baffert and his owners thought he would do. He would take the lead, and at that point, Charlton, he wouldn't look back.
Yeah.
Just a marvelously run race, Charlton. Now they're in line for that second leg of the Kentucky Derby, Charlton.
Yeah.
And well, not the Kentucky Derby, Triple Crown.
Triple Crown, yeah.
This is generally the race that's the decisive one, Charlton, because, you know, they bring in some new horses in this one, Charlton. But if you can withstand this, Charlton, and get to that third leg, Charlton, that's where all the money is to be made. Because if you're a Triple Crown winner, you go into the record books, Charlton, not only that, your stud fees triple.
Yep. I'm sure a lot of people were getting that line, but that's for horses, not for you good old jocks outside. That's funny. I want to say 4 though in 4 starts. And if you look at Baffert, he'll try to make it 5 for 5 in the Preakness and with his Kentucky Derby winner. I just think about Justify, obviously, he's a favorite. But when you also look at another horse, what would you think of Good Magic? Do you have Good Magic with that magic to make the elixir down south, Big C? You have Good Magic? He's 3-1, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, Justified doesn't have the odds that he had in the Derby. And, you know, when the races get a little bit longer, Charlton, they start looking at other horses.
Yeah.
And potentially you could have a fast track, Charlton, if you don't get the rain. I mean, if it stays away.
Yeah.
And that would make the race a little more competitive. But, you know, still everybody is pulling for Justified because people like to be a part of history in sports, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, you know, Triple Crown efforts, you know, that have gone by the wayside in the second race, Charlton, where, you know, some horse snuck up out of nowhere that didn't have great odds. All of a sudden, he had a great race.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the money that it cost everybody down the line, and, you know, everybody wants to have a leg in the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
You don't always have to win the Triple Crown. Just win a leg.
Yeah.
Because the value of your property goes up much higher.
Exactly. And especially, Good Magic is going to be a 3-1, obviously, but you look at the record, he's 2-3-1 in 6 starts. It's just a matter of who gets off to the best start, but Justified looks good. There's also Tenfold at 20-1. What do you think of Sporting Chance? What a name for a horse in a race. Sporting Chance is 30-1, Big C, and the trainer is Wayne Lucas, and the jockey is Luis Contreras, but he's 2-1-1 in 7 starts. That's not that impressive. Does he have a sporting chance to win this race, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, if you place a bet on him to win and place, and he comes through, that's a sporting chance. That's a heck of a payday, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about what he's going to be paying to win, I mean, you don't shy away from certain bets.
Yes.
You got to look at the odds when you look at a race. I mean, Justified paid $765 to win.
Yeah.
In Churchill Downs.
Yeah.
So the odds on the payoff are not that great. But if you get a horse that's running 20-30-1, Charlton, you have to hedge a bet on them.
Yep.
You know, even just to place a show.
Yeah.
Because the payoff is worthwhile.
Oh, it's worthwhile, Big C. But I want to get your thoughts on something that might be near and dear to you, Big C. Remember Julio Jones lost that $150,000 earring down there in the lake, someplace down there in Alabama, Big C, and they offered a $5,000 reward for a $150,000 earring. Could you imagine some good boy trying to turn that in for his $5,000 reward? Number 2, listen, Lone Sailor. You like to sail alone, Big C, and he's 15-1 odds. Lone Sailor. His record last 9 starts is only 1-3-1. What chance would you give to Lone Sailor is winning this race, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I guess any horse or any owner or trainer wants to add to that one victory, that 2 victories. And you know, everybody has a stumbling chance coming out of the blocks. Basically.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
and it comes down to getting that good start out of the gate.
Yeah.
You know, when you get to horsing, Charlton, horse racing,
Yes.
you know, it's like shooting fish in a toilet.
Yep.
You know, it's hard to miss, but it's also hard to be accurate.
Big C.
You know, so there's a real guessing game. What's going to hit what? And so, you know, this is Julio Jones saying, okay,
Yes.
here's $5,000 for $150,000 earring.
I'll take it.
And I'm hoping that none of you good old boys know math. Okay?
Yeah, that's
So
funny.
$5,000 will buy you a lot less than $150,000 will.
That's funny. Last horse we'll get on that has a chance. I look at Quip, 12-1 odds, but Quip is 3-1 in the last 5 starts, and that's a chance. You always have a chance when you're out there a horse and you're running, but Quip, 12-1, Lone Star, 15-1, Good Magic. I really like the name Good Magic, and Justify is actually the favorite. Has not lost a race, and this track has won in 3/16 of a mile race. I'm telling you, there's something about horse races. Those horses are kind of like NCAA athletes. They don't get paid, but everybody makes money. Everybody makes money. All they get to do is become what do you call the horse that wins a lot, Big C? They try to make more horses look just like them. What do they do with them, Big C? They set them out to stud.
Well, that's that stud fee. But Charlton, he gets a bucket of oats and probably a bottle of Gatorade.
Yeah.
Okay, so he can be hydrated. Hey, they give him a bath every now and then, so it does pay off.
Yeah.
You know, they don't force him to go to a car wash. They give him a hand car wash.
Yeah, that's funny. So at least he gets to be like the NCAA athletes, and the NCAA said the horses don't complain. Why you guys complaining, Big C? That's funny. Let me get your thoughts real quick across the pond. Now, people get married in this country because they want to marry somebody. And if it doesn't work out, you just get rid of them like Donald Trump and marry somebody else. If that makes any sense.
Over and over again.
Over and over again. And if that don't work out, you pay somebody for some entertainment, if that makes any sense to you, Big C. But I do wish...
Well, at $130,000 a pop, Charlton, I'm going to be short on that entertainment list.
That's funny. He paid more for 4 minutes than the dress that the princess is going to be wearing across the pond. Just give me your thoughts real quick. And we talked about it earlier in the week. It's all fair in love and war. It's nice when people love each other. And I just want to get your thoughts on, I think about Princess Diana and the royalty and the Whig Society and the UK, and how so many people from around the world are watching this couple. And in a society where, for the most part, people have always been the same eugenic look, the same ethnic background. Well, these two are totally contrast. We know all life began in Africa, but the media acts like they're ignorant to that fact. So the fact that they say this is an interracial marriage, I think that doesn't really make people look twice like it did 30 years ago. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it doesn't, Charlton. And I look at Prince Harry. He reminds me so much of his mother, the way that he lived his life, Charlton.
Yeah.
He's that person who doesn't conform. And you look at Princess Diana during her lifetime. You know, prior to in her life, she got to the point that she said, I don't want to conform to what people want me to be.
Yeah.
I was an individual prior to becoming princess, and I wanted to go back to being that individual. You know, when she was dating Dodi Fayed, Charlton,
Yeah.
she decided that she wanted to still be herself, and she didn't want to be held under this little glass dome that the monarchy has a tendency to put people under.
Yeah.
But she was just this great humanitarian person, Charlton. When you think about probably the most loved female in the world during her lifetime, Charlton, once she became married and joined the monarchy. But she did so much for the salvation of humanity and other people.
Yes, she did.
That she put herself second. And you think about her son, Harry, and you think about how Harry has gone about living his adult life, Charlton. A 10-year member of the Royal Air Force, Charlton. You think,
Yeah.
like, he didn't have to.
Nope.
But he's been a pilot in the Royal Air Force for 10 years. You know, he's served tours of duty, Charlton, in the Middle East. But he has gone out and he has aided those, Charlton, just like his mother, that did not have the opportunity to aid themselves. You think about he's the iconic figure of the Invictus Games for wounded warrior veterans. This is basically their Olympics. Prince Harry is the spearhead of that.
Yeah.
And so regardless of how you look at him or his life, you think about how he cherishes those who have sacrificed so much for their countries, Charlton, around the world, to bring them together in a moment of glory. Just like what his wedding is doing, Charlton, where he is going out to change the face of the world and the world's thoughts on what a monarchy should look like.
Yeah.
Is that a monarchy should embrace everybody. And that's what he is doing with this marriage to Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
He said, this is about the world. This is not just about us. It's about the world, to show that people should care about people,
Yes.
not a look.
Yeah.
And this love story between these two people, Charlton, is very special.
Yeah.
Because it will make history, it will change the face of the world, and how people look at each other, Charlton.
I think that's so important that we have a society that's contrasting what's happening in this great country, the land of the free and the home of the brave, and it's so divisive in the United States right now. We have to go across the pond to find out some people that have some class in the way they behave from the top down. I really wish them nothing but the best in their marriage. I do want to touch on a little bit of the world of baseball. We have, just to run down some baseball, I know it's a backseat right now until the NBA playoffs are over, but if you look at the National League, Atlanta, love what the Braves are doing. They're at top of the heap, followed by Philadelphia, and then Washington, New York, and Miami. That's in the National League East Division. In the Central Division, Pittsburgh in the top of the heap, followed by Milwaukee, St. Louis, Chicago, and Cincinnati. In the West, Arizona is in the top of the heap. Not many people expected that when the season began. We all thought it'd be the Dodgers and the Giants. But Arizona, Colorado, San Francisco, the Dodgers, and then San Diego. If we look across in the American League, Big C, I look at New York. They're really setting the world on fire. They're atop the heap with Boston and Toronto, Tampa, and Baltimore in the East. In the Central Division, I know you like Cleveland because of that big C on the top of that helmet, Big C, but Cleveland's atop the leap, and they're ahead of Minnesota, Detroit, Kansas City, and Chicago. In the West, the defending World Series champions, you have Houston leading Los Angeles. Trout's having a great season. A lot of people are going to pay more attention to him coming up. And then Seattle, Oakland, and Texas. So we wish everybody well in the world of baseball. Big C, NHL, Las Vegas and Winnipeg. I got to give a shout out to you good old boys up north, so I'm going to just sing it to you. Oh, Canada, our home and native land. Something I keep choking. I don't know why I choke on that sometimes, Big C. Give me your thoughts on Vegas, Winnipeg. Canada really needs a team from their native land to get into Lord Stanley Cup. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't know if that's going to happen this year. I mean, Vegas right now is on a heater. Fleury is playing masterful in goal for Las Vegas. And like I said, he was there last year. So he knows what it's like to sip from Lord Stanley's Cup when he was with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But when you talk about having an expansion franchise, and you have this veteran goalie who has been the leader of this franchise, Charlton, and has taken them to great heights. But we also talked about the marketing of the Stanley Cup, Charlton, when you talked about it not having the TV numbers or the following that we're getting right now in the NBA playoffs.
No.
And a lot of that is predicated to the markets that it's played in, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's why we're not getting these primetime games going up against the NBA playoffs unless you have certain type of cable. So, it's really hurting them.
Yeah.
But, when you're in Vegas, even though the Knights are playing, what do you go to Vegas for? You go to Vegas for all the lights, glitz, and glamour, Charlton.
And you don't tell people what happens there anyway.
No,
so what happens there stays there.
Well, I was at the hockey game.
Yeah.
But you gave the ticket away outside the arena because you had a better option.
Yep, that's true.
But, as much as you want to pull for Canada and Winnipeg in this series, Charlton,
yes,
that the Stanley Cup would be represented north of the border, Charlton. It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
To have a franchise that's in its inaugural season participating in Stanley Cup, Charlton, and if they get there, they can win it. You think about that. They can win it. Think about how that alters the history of all professional sports, not just hockey, Charlton, but all professional sports. If you ever see an expansion draft again, Charlton, after this year in any major league sports, hockey, baseball, basketball, football, they will not follow the blueprint that Gary Bettman in the NHL did with Las Vegas.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should take and divide it in North and South Division and guarantee you have a team from Canada. That's just my opinion. I think it would make a lot of sense to keep two countries watching the quest for a Lord Stanley's Cup. Big C, as we close out, this is such an exciting weekend. When I look at, we have the horses racing up in Baltimore. That should be a great race, and we just ran that down. We also have the Billboard Awards for people that love entertainment. NBC trying to compete against the NBA with that. And I really want to see En Vogue. I'm going to record it because I used to say, hold on to your love. I think En Vogue was really good, and it made me think I could sing it at time, Big C. But I want to get your...
those are female singers.
Yeah, okay.
So sometimes you might want to pump your brakes on some of these people you're trying to emulate.
I understand, Big C. I'll pump my brakes on that for a while. But when I get in the shower, it's all good. I want to get your thoughts. Cleveland, I ran down, as you were just getting in, Big C, I ran down how they got here. And Cleveland, and you look at what they're up against. This is a team that has to win 4 out of possible 5 games to knock off the Celtics. Do you think they have it in them? It starts one game at a time, we know that, but your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Charlton, you think about, does Cleveland have it in them? I don't think as a collective group they do, Charlton. This is a group of players that are a lot of followers. I mean, LeBron James is just as good as basketball has ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
But he also gets tired, Charlton. I mean, when he's carrying this load night in and night out, as great as he is, frustration comes into play also.
Yeah.
And you could see that when he was sitting on the bench in the last 2 games, Charlton, that if I take a break, the game is over.
Yeah.
I can't sit down 2 minutes and trust my teammates because all of a sudden now somebody's gone on a 10-point run.
Yeah.
And we're out of the game. And so the mental aspect of James is what has to be protected more than anything else. He's had a tremendous 8-year run in the NBA. But you have to look at the rest of the players, Charlton. Are they expecting for him to get them there?
I think so.
That's what I've looked at, in this series after coming out of the first 2 series that they played, Charlton, against Indiana and Toronto.
Yeah.
Is the rest of the team looking for him to get them there? And if you're just looking for him to get you there, then you're not giving your all.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, is that they're not being the NBA style of player that you'd expect to see in a semifinal series, Charlton, an Eastern Final Series.
Yes.
Is that they've been kind of lackluster at times. I mean, it's gotten to the point now is that you even have players talking in the press conference about negative about each other.
Yeah.
Talking about all talk. What you're talking, so why are you telling everybody else all talk?
Yep.
If you're the ringleader on the all talk squad,
yeah,
then that's what you expect from the rest of the players, Charlton.
Yeah.
This put up or shut up. I as a professional athlete, when you get to this time of the year, you know what's at stake.
Yeah.
And so if you're sitting there pointing fingers at teammates about what they say and what they don't say, that means that you're being a fan also.
Yeah.
Is that you're not being a leader.
Yep.
Because you're paying more attention to someone's verbiage than what you are their actions on the court.
Yeah.
And so I've always found that to be the best way to play a game.
Yeah.
Is to lead by example. That's production throughout the contest, not production in the press conference.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
And you got a lot of guys right now that want to be productive in the press conference.
That makes a lot of sense. So we'll see. I mean, there's something about watching how many teams, the home team, they got to get to the free throw line more than the visiting team. That's a Las Vegas hint for you good old boys out there. I also want to swing it out to the West Coast. The land of vibranium, the Golden State Warriors. We've talked so much about them being the team that's the marquee team in the NBA over the last 4 years, Big C. And now you have this team from Houston. They seem to have found a little bit of life. So what's more valuable, gold or oil? We're about to find out on the Western Conference. Golden State, if they win out home, then they win it. It's that simple. That Houston has to try to get a game. Golden State's not likely to lose much at home, but I still look at the line. Las Vegas has Golden State favored by 7. The over-under is 226. Both teams had double-digit wins. Give me your thoughts on what you want to see that will dictate what happens in this game on Sunday. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, it's not what I want to see. Is that I'm going to go by what I saw in this last game. There was 84 points scored by players other than the name of Harden and Paul. That was the difference in the game, Charlton. We talked about the lack of productivity in Game 1 from the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
We saw the numbers that Paul and Harden put up, but the rest of the team did not pull their load. In this last game, Charlton, those players doubled their point production from Game 1.
Yeah.
That was the difference in the blowout. Now, can they sustain that level, Charlton, of knocking down the threes, getting to the rim? That's going to be the question on the road. But Golden State defensively cannot allow that type of production again, Charlton. You know what to expect from Harden and Paul.
Yeah.
Just like in Cleveland, you know what to expect from James. But you don't know, you can't not let the rest of the team destroy you like that. They're going to have to body up on some people. You know that Capella can't hurt you outside, so you're going to have to push him out of the paint.
Yeah.
But you also got to put somebody in and not let these guys get to the rim like they were doing in this second game in Houston.
Well, Big C, I love what you said. I saw some replays because I watch a lot of games and I slow it down and watch it with the sound off. And I saw a lot of times players were standing around on defense, not even making an attempt to block a shot. Now, I know my friend in Las Vegas says that's how it's supposed to be, so they get more than 4 or 5 games, right, Big C? I mean, that's what he'd say. He's so cynical, but he's usually right. So for you good old boys that love watching sports, sometimes watch it in slow-mo and turn the sound down and let your eyes tell you what you see. Big C, I want to get your thoughts on Curry as one of the only, I think he's the only unanimous MVP the league has ever had 2 years ago. He's 1 for 13 on three-point baskets. That's unlike him. And there are a lot of people saying he just needs some home cooking, but also it's going to be Golden State trying to put up an effort and Houston trying to combat that. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, his teammates have to get him some open looks. He's been pressed defensively by the Rockets, and they know that, he has not been as quick here in the postseason as he was a year ago. The injuries have taken a toll on him, and I don't care who you are as a professional athlete. When you start getting leg injuries, it takes a toll on you. They've made him work extremely hard on defense. They've been physical on him, Charlton. If you go back to the Cavaliers series from 2 years ago, how they got physical against Steph Curry. They knocked him down on the floor multiple times. That takes a toll mentally and physically on a player of his stature.
Yeah.
So they have to find a way to keep him clean. And if they can keep him clean, and that's the terminology they use in football about a quarterback, you got to keep him clean.
Yeah.
So that he can have a clean pocket and throw the ball. This is the same thing they're going to have to do for Steph Curry. They have to find a way to get him some clean looks. And if they can get him some clean looks, Charlton, it can spell trouble for the Rockets.
Last 2 players, Big C. Paul walked off the floor in Houston with ice on his ankle, okay? Durant's been unstoppable. Which one of those 2 players do you expect to have a bigger game in Game 3? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, sometimes that ice on the ankle and stuff, it's easy to get to the glass if the glass is sitting on the floor. So don't let that fool you that he was hurt.
I knew you'd go there.
Because when you're sitting in your chair in the locker, whatever libation you have, normally sitting right there on the floor in front of your locker.
Yes.
So he can hold it between his feet and chill it. But when I look at Paul has had a history of injuries in the playoffs in his career.
I know.
And so this is nothing new for him. It just depends on how severe this is. Kevin Durant is going to be Kevin Durant. It's just like LeBron James being LeBron James.
Yeah.
Those 2 players in the playoffs, no team has an answer for either one of them.
No.
Now, you might outscore their team, but you don't have an answer for either one of these guys. They're going to get you that 35, 37 points a game.
Yeah.
He's just unstoppable.
Yeah.
It's just you got to slow down the rest of the team to keep him out of pace. You talked about Steph Curry. Steph Curry has to get a little closer to the basket.
Yeah.
Is what he's doing. He's got to shoot from inside out. Durant can shoot from anywhere.
Yeah.
But if Steph Curry starts shooting inside out, then he gets to the paint, to a few shots off. Now he can back up a little bit and maybe knock down a couple threes.
Well, that sounds like what my friend in Vegas is saying. We have the royal wedding, Big C. A lot of beach showing up at the royal wedding, washing up across the pond in the United Kingdom. The Preakness has a lot of beach also out there in the mud up there in the great Northeast. We talk about NBA basketball is fantastic. The NHL, we're starting to see who's going to represent the East and West for a chase of the Lord Stanley Cup. Baseball still swinging the bat. The Billboard Awards this weekend. Good luck to that. Also, some NASCAR racing down to the good old boys in North Carolina. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bundini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking forward to that American League Eastern Division and the New York Yankees. CC Sabathia tonight, Charlton, is going for his 240th win all time. He's only trailing Bartolo Colon, the robust one of the Texas Rangers. He has 242 victories as an active pitcher in the American League, and CC looks to get to his 240th win tonight, Charlton, to keep the Yankees on that hot streak that they're on.
Well, Big C, I tell you, it's all fair and love and war. And I'll ask you, if you're at the wedding, everybody speak now or forever hold your peace. And speaking of holding your peace, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.